What is going on, guys? So today we're back with another Pokemon Masters video, and today we're actually going to be taking a little bit of a look into Hilbert and Oshawott. So these two guys were actually just released in a banner not too long ago. I am kind of late on making this little Limelight analysis here, but I definitely wanted to touch on a couple of things, namely the same ones that we went over with Lyra. Things like damage output, utility, future-proof, and even some team ideas to kind of get you rolling if you by chance already have Hilbert and Oshawott and you can kind of like play around with them. So the first thing that I want to go over here are our base stats. So we do have an HP of 490, an attack of 197, a defense of 130, speed of 202, special attack 179, and a special defense of 179 as well. So what this actually ends up translating into is basically a support character who has a better chance at being a physical attacker than it does at being a special attacker, but it actually has a little bit more special defense than physical defense. It kind of ends up in this weird realm where we're almost trying to compete with other support characters that have a high special defense, but it kind of can go both ways, because Rosa is the first one that comes to mind if you think about special defense in the support role. Rosa is definitely going to have this completely covered in terms of like most of the bulk. And then when it comes to Rosa and possibilities of damage output, it's not very high. And I think Oshawott actually has a little bit better of a chance at being superior in terms of its damage output. Long story short, what this ends up translating into is a bulky support character that can basically have a small chance at outputting a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot. So in terms of that bulk, let's actually take a look. Up against the overall bulk, like every Pokemon in the game, bulk ranked, Oshawott actually ends up being 5th. So what that ends up meaning is that if Oshawott is your main support character, that should actually be pretty good. You have a really high enough bulk that can actually tank a few hits. But if you already have things on the team that like Rosa, you're basically going to become second in terms of bulk, which depending on how you want to run Oshawott could work out in your favor, or once we get into a little bit more about Oshawott, you may see that being the top bulk on the team actually may benefit more than hurt. Because even though you're going to be like the first one to receive any kind of damage from the opponent's AI in single player mode, it kind of doesn't really play into the gimmick that Oshawott kind of has with one of its moves. Now in terms of physical and special bulk, we actually end up 5th with physical and 11th in special bulk. If it came down to a situation where the opponent's team was going to be using more physical moves than special moves, Oshawott is actually a decent candidate there. If it's going to be down to special moves versus physical moves, maybe kind of want to look at maybe Rosa being the definite one to go with instead of Oshawott here. Oshawott can still hold its own when it comes to special bulk, but it's still not quite as high as its physical bulk, which definitely plays an interesting factor in trying to min-max your abilities here. And then in terms of stat sum, we actually end up 14th out of all of the Pokemon, which is not actually too bad if you think about it. That's pretty decent. Now in terms of damage output, we actually end up being pretty underwhelming here. So Aqua Tail is not the world's greatest move. It actually has more power than Waterfall, but it's still rather weak, unfortunately. Waterfall at least does give you the benefit of having the possibility of making the user flinch, which could, I guess, work out pretty well, but still it's kind of an odds kind of thing. Are you actually going to hit the flinch, or are they just going to, you know, skate by without flinching, or does their passive even prevent flinching in all scenarios either way? Now with impervious as one of our passives, it could in turn actually help Oshawott be a rather like heavily buffed Pokemon that can't be debuffed. But even then, with our stats here, we're not really hitting on a whole lot in terms of our damage output. Impervious is great because it helps us prevent from lowering our stats, but because our moves are so lackluster in terms of base power and our attack and special attack aren't really like amazing, it doesn't really help us too much. It definitely helps us a little, but not enough to really put us on the map in terms of like a really good physical attacker or a really good special attacker. It just doesn't work out. Now in terms of our utility here, so speed is gonna be huge here. So we actually have access to X Speed All, which is a really interesting move. It's the first time that we've actually seen an X Speed All on any Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken. So speed is going to be insanely good in terms of helping the bar just regenerate so much faster. As a support type Pokemon, this is where the utility really starts to shine for Oshawott, because being able to refill that bar without just using move gauge replenish altogether, something similar to like time to energize, this makes Oshawott actually really interesting. And if you think about how to pair Oshawott with other trainers, if you paired it with trainers that are already kind of speedy anyways, then it just kind of makes it all the more better. Next, we actually have In This Together, which is the signature move that Oshawott actually gets here, which actually buffs attack for all of your allies. So right then and there, both trainer moves are all allies on target. So that means you can boost speed for every single ally and physical attack for every single ally, which is huge. So automatically just brainstorming some teams here, anything that already is going to be really good on physical attack is going to be a really good pair with Oshawott here. The biggest problem though is in terms of utility, the support role already has so much competition with Rosa, with Phoebe. It doesn't really matter like which way you slice it. Oshawott is really playing an uphill battle here. Being that Rosa is a free-to-play character, it's kind of going to remain the top support role until they give us something that just completely blows it out of the water. Next, talking about our future proofing here. So the only thing I really feel like Oshawott has going for it in terms of future viability is going to be that it gets an evolution. So currently at the moment, we cannot evolve it all the way up to Samurott. We are kind of stuck with Oshawott at the moment. So the things to look forward to in the future are definitely going to be your evolution, which does mean that we could possibly get different moves. But being that we're a support character, I don't expect them to give Oshawott or even Samurott any kind of like big moves in the future. It's not supposed to really be a physical or a special striker. It's supposed to be a support role. So I think our moves are going to pretty much remain the same. So we're just going to basically get a new sync move, which, I mean, okay. It is what it is. Unless they, for some crazy reason, start attaching like crazy effects onto these sync moves, I don't really see Samurott being amazing, much more amazing than our good old Oshawott here. Another thing that could really actually help in future proofing is if we got some more interesting impervious units. If we were actually to get an impervious unit that could basically be a physical striker altogether, something with a little bit of speed, with a little bit of physical attack to start with, then I think Oshawott would actually gain a lot more footing, because it would be greatly paired with that unit and able to just carry that unit into battle and make this really, really buff physical attacker. I think that would actually be really, really good. Last but not least, moving on to some team ideas. So I was just kind of rolling off the top of my head when I wrote these down, but basically I was thinking of Maylene and Nolan first and foremost, because both Maylene and Hilbert are actually going to be able to boost attack on the pincer, and Nolan and Pincer, with their insane attack stat as is, are already going to be boosted like crazy. That's going to be one of the biggest physical attacking teams that I can think of, which is insane to think about. Plus, on top of that, once you Mega Evolve into Mega Pincer actually gets impervious, which means that if you can get up to Mega Pincer before the enemy sync move, oh my gosh, you're going to be so buffed, and you're going to have two characters on your side that can't have their stats lowered. And basically, Oshawott should be the bulkier of the two between Maylene and Hilbert here, so you're actually going to be able to basically tank a ton of moves before you even take the enemy sync move. So you should actually be in a pretty decent situation if you try that team out, which I think would actually be really cool. So the other team that I thought of would be Will and Rosa here. So Will kind of has this interesting spot where he can be really, really, really punishing if you raise his stats up the right way, and he can actually output some insane damage if you can set it up. But with him also carrying impervious, here again you would have two characters on your team that basically can't have their stats lowered. So that's insanely good, and Rosa is basically going to be there to help boost special attack for Will, because our physical attack buff doesn't really do a whole lot on Oshawott whenever we're trying to buff our Will, but it could actually end up doing pretty well if you were able to set up a really interesting turn where Will is basically boosted like crazy. You're able to raise his speed. You've got the speed buff, you've got the bar regeneration, you've got tons of damage with Will. I mean, you've got pretty much everything you could ask for in that team, which I think would actually be really fun to run. Now, unfortunately, I personally do not have Oshawott and Hilbert, but we're actually going to attempt to try to get those right here. So let's actually roll over to the shop, and we are going to do a sync pair scout here. So I basically need blue more than anything, but we're actually going to stick to trying to get our Hilbert and Oshawott for this video here. So let's go ahead and do this sync pair scout. So we're looking for a decent starting flashy animation. You can actually see that they added the skip animation down there at the very bottom, so that's interesting. No flashy animation, unfortunately. Let's see what kind of antenna we got. We're looking for anything decent here, but definitely it's got a 3-star antenna. Definitely Oshawott would be amazing here. What kind of doors do we got? 4-star doors, and it's a dude. So unfortunately, that is actually not what we were looking for, but sometimes you just gotta take what you get. But that is actually gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think of Hilbert and Oshawott. Have you guys already got him? Are you guys really hammering in the gyms to try to get him, or are you just passing? Because personally for me, I don't feel like I really need Hilbert and Oshawott. If I got him, I would be happy with it, but it's not like I really need him. So that's just kind of where I sit on him. In the future, yeah, he'll be kind of decent when he gets his evolution, but he's really not going to be like crazy meta defining, I don't think. So unfortunately, that's just kind of where he sits at the moment. But that is actually going to be it for this video, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember that the Discord link is down in the description below. But until our next video, I'm going to go ahead and head out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you could do that, but if you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about the video. I do highly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to support me in any way, there are several links down in the description for Patreon, joining the community here on YouTube, or even just directly PayPal if that's your thing. I greatly appreciate everyone's name that's on screen, as you guys have showed some sort of support outside of just viewing the videos, and I thank you guys. You don't understand from the bottom of my heart. So until our next video, guys, I will catch you then.